Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Every comment helps these disturbing stories find their way back to you. Now, let's step into the darkness. I was 21 when this happened, and even now, years later, I still can't drive I-5 at night without feeling that same cold twist in my stomach. It was a Sunday at the end of September, the kind of night when the air starts to turn sharp, and you can smell the rain coming even if the sky hasn't opened up yet. My friend Tyler and I had just left Eugene after spending the weekend at my mom's place. We should have been on the road by late afternoon, but Tyler convinced me to stay for dinner. And then we wasted another 2 hours sitting around drinking coffee, talking about football, and procrastinating the way 20-somethings always do. By the time we finally left, it was close to 11, and I knew we were in for a long, dark drive back to Portland. If you've ever been on I-5 at that hour, you know what it's like. The road stretches forever, straight and black, with the trees closing in on both sides like walls. Every few miles, the green glow of an exit sign flashes by, pointing toward little towns you'll never see, and the hum of your tires becomes this hypnotic background noise that makes you feel like you're the last car alive in the world. I was tired, and the monotony wasn't helping. My eyelids felt heavy, and I had both hands locked tight on the wheel, telling myself to focus. Tyler, of course, wasn't tired at all. He was wired on his third can of Monster, legs propped on the dash, running his mouth about some girl he'd been seeing, about a job interview he had lined up, about whatever random thought crossed his brain. I only half listened. I was more concerned with the road ahead and keeping the car steady. Around Salem, he shifted in his seat and groaned. "Man, I gotta piss. Bad. Pull off at the next rest stop." I told him we could probably wait until Portland, but he shook his head like a kid. "No way, dude. I'm serious. I'm about to explode." So I gave in. The next blue sign read, "Rest Area, Erie 1 mile," and I eased into the exit. The lot that opened up in front of us was the kind of place you never pay attention to during the day, but at night feels like the set of a bad dream. A cracked expanse of asphalt big enough for maybe 20 cars, a squat concrete restroom building in the middle, 2 vending machines glowing faintly beside it. A couple of tall lamps flickering overhead, their circles of light leaving half the lot drowned in shadow. Beyond all that, just trees, thick, black, endless. At first glance, I thought we were alone. No semis, no other cars, just us. But then my headlights swept across a dusty blue sedan parked crooked a few spaces down from the restroom. The driver's side door was cracked open just an inch, and the faint glow of a dome light spilled out, illuminating the inside in a dull yellow haze. I slowed instinctively, staring. The windshield was fogged up from the inside, smeared in uneven streaks. The hood was cold, no steam, no ticking metal. Whoever had driven it hadn't just arrived. And the trunk wasn't latched. It was popped just enough to leave a dark seam like a gash. I parked 2 spaces away under one of the working lamps. Tyler stretched and grinned. Man, this is how every horror movie starts. He was waiting for me to laugh. I didn't. Something about that car dug under my skin. My eyes kept dragging back to it, searching for movement. "Come on, dude," he said, elbowing me. "Don't get weird. I'm not joking. I gotta piss." We stepped out into the night air. It smelled of wet pavement and pine sap. The silence pressed down heavy, like even the sound of the highway had been swallowed by the forest. Tyler strode toward the restroom, and I trailed behind, glancing back at the sedan. Through the faint glow of the dome light, I thought I saw a shape slumped in the back seat. Maybe a pile of clothes, maybe not. Inside, the restroom stank of bleach and mildew. The lights buzzed overhead, one flickering so violently I thought it might explode. The walls were painted cinder block, stained and cracked, the kind of place you don't want to touch with bare skin. No one else was in there, just rows of chipped sinks, warped stalls, and the echo of dripping water. Tyler cracked a joke about catching hepatitis just by touching the door handle. I half smiled, washed my hands fast, and already wanted to leave. Then we heard it. A slam. Both of us froze. It came from outside, sharp and heavy, loud enough to vibrate in my chest. Tyler whispered, "What the hell was that?" We pushed the door open cautiously. The air outside felt colder, thicker. The lot looked the same at first. Vending machines humming, lamps buzzing, trees looming, but the sedan was different. The driver's door was shut now, the dome light off. The windshield was still fogged but streaked with smears. Not random. Handprints. Flattened palms pressed from the inside, dragging down. And the trunk, still cracked, bulged upward. Something inside was pressing against it, shapes like pale fingers straining against the seam. I grabbed Tyler's sleeve. "Do you see that?" He squinted and muttered a curse. "Jesus." Before he could finish, the restroom door behind us creaked open. We spun around. No one there. Just the door rocking slowly, as if someone had slipped out and vanished. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear my own pulse pounding. Tyler tugged my arm. "Let's go. Screw this." We hurried back to my car. I jammed the key into the ignition. Click. Nothing. I tried again. Click. The dashboard lights flickered, but the engine wouldn't turn. Tyler's voice went sharp. "Don't do this now. Come on, man. Start it." I twisted the key again and again, my knuckles white, sweat beading on my forehead. Then I saw movement. Across the lot, at the edge of the tree line, something stepped out. A man, tall, shoulders squared, a hood pulled low over his face. In his hand was something long, a crowbar maybe, or a shovel. He didn't move at first, just stood there, watching us. Then he started walking. Slow, deliberate. The metal in his hand dragged along the asphalt with a sound that scraped the night in two. Clang, clang, each step closer. Tyler's voice cracked. "He's looking right at us." I twisted the key desperately. The engine coughed, sputtered, then died again. The sedan's trunk snapped open with a violent bang, and a man tumbled out. Not climbing, falling. His wrists were bound with duct tape, his mouth gagged. He hit the asphalt hard, writhing like a fish, muffled screams tearing through the tape. Tyler lunged for the door handle. "We gotta help him." I couldn't move, couldn't think. The hooded figure kept coming, each step slow and steady, shovels scraping the pavement. The gagged man thrashed on the ground, eyes bulging, body jerking in panic. Tyler shouted at me, desperate, "Drive, drive, man." The car coughed again, caught for half a second, then choked out. The hooded figure stepped into the light. The thing in his hand was clear now, not a crowbar. A shovel. He hefted it onto his shoulder, eyes locked on us, closing the distance foot by foot. And then behind us, the restroom door slammed shut. Hard, like someone else had just stepped out. Tyler had 1 foot out of the car when the restroom door slammed shut behind us. The sound cracked across the lot like a gunshot, sharp enough to freeze both of us. For a second, I thought it was just the wind, but the heavy slam didn't sound like a draft. It sounded deliberate, like someone had yanked it hard and let go. Tyler's eyes flicked from the gagged man thrashing on the asphalt to the hooded figure with the shovel, then back to the restroom. His voice was low, panicked. "There's more than one." The words landed in my chest like ice. The bound man on the ground jerked violently, kicking against the asphalt, the muffled sound of his screams punching through the night. The hooded figure was halfway across the lot now, shovel dragging in steady rhythm. Clang, clang. Tyler shouted, "We can't just sit here. Help me." And before I could stop him, he was out of the car, sprinting toward the man on the ground. I shouted after him, but it was useless. My body stayed glued to the seat, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. My instincts screamed to lock the doors and hit the gas, even if the car sputtered and died halfway down the ramp. But my best friend was already crouched over the gagged man, fumbling with the tape around his wrists. The hooded figure raised the shovel, and for a second, I thought I was about to watch my friend's head split open. But instead of rushing, he just stopped a few paces away, looming in the light, shovel resting across his shoulder. It was worse than if he'd attacked. The patience, the way he seemed to be waiting. "Tyler, get back in the car." I screamed, slamming my fist against the horn. The sound blared, tearing through the silence, echoing into the trees. The hooded figure didn't even flinch. Tyler yanked at the tape, swore loudly, then shouted, "The tape's too tight. He's cutting off his circulation." He looked up at me, eyes wild. "We can't just leave him." I glanced back at the restroom. The door was closed again, the concrete walls standing still and lifeless. But I swore I felt eyes in there, watching, waiting. The gagged man flailed, rolling toward Tyler like a desperate animal. His muffled cries rose higher, frantic. That's when I heard it. Another sound, faint but distinct. The crunch of footsteps on gravel. From the side of the building, a second figure appeared, emerging from the shadows near the vending machines. This one was shorter, wiry, with a hood pulled up the same way. His hands weren't empty. In one, he carried duct tape. In the other, something glinted in the lamplight. A knife. My chest locked tight. "Tyler," I screamed, voice cracking. "Behind you." He spun too late. The wiry man lunged, knife flashing. Tyler staggered back, instinctively dragging the bound man between them. The gagged man convulsed, muffled shrieks bursting from behind the tape. I fumbled at my seatbelt, heart hammering, and finally shoved the door open. My feet hit asphalt, and the night air stabbed cold against my face. I didn't think. I just moved. I sprinted toward them, shouting nonsense, hoping to distract, to draw eyes away from Tyler. The wiry man's head snapped toward me, knife gleaming. The tall one with the shovel still hadn't moved. He just watched, silent, shovel balanced, like he had all the time in the world. Tyler shoved the bound man toward me and yelled, "Get him in the car, now!" I bent, grabbing the duct-taped arms, and nearly dropped him. He was heavier than I expected, limp in places, thrashing in others. The wiry man lunged again, knife slashing close enough that I felt the air shift. Tyler swung wildly, fist connecting with the guy's jaw, sending him stumbling back. The bound man moaned through the gag, eyes rolling. His skin was clammy, sweat slicked. I dragged him toward the car, my muscles screaming. Each step felt like moving through water. Behind me, Tyler and the wiry man crashed together, grunts and curses mixing with the scrape of shoes on asphalt. And still, the tall figure didn't move. That's when I understood he wasn't supposed to move. He was the wall, the anchor, the one making sure no one left. I wrenched the back door open, half shoved, half dropped the bound man inside. He thrashed weakly, head slamming against the seat. Then a scream tore across the lot. Tyler's. I spun. The wiry man had him pinned against the hood of the sedan, knife pressed against his throat. Tyler's eyes locked on mine, wide, pleading. "Go!" he screamed. "Get out of here." The tall man finally moved. Slow, deliberate, stepping closer with the shovel. His presence filled the lot, the silence between each clang of metal deafening. I hesitated, every nerve in my body pulling in opposite directions. My best friend was about to die, but the man in my back seat was writhing like he was seconds from passing out. The wiry man's knife pressed harder. A bead of blood traced down Tyler's neck. "Go!" Tyler screamed again, voice breaking. Something in me snapped. I dove into the driver's seat, slammed the lock, twisted the key. For the first time all night, the engine roared to life. The tall man's head tilted slightly, like he was almost impressed. Then he stepped forward, shovel raised. Tyler's scream cut off sharp. I slammed the gear into reverse, tires squealing against the cracked asphalt. The sedan's headlights swept across the lot, catching a glimpse of Tyler's face for the last time. Mouth open in a silent cry, eyes wide as the knife drove down. I didn't see more. I couldn't. The bound man in the back seat convulsed, muffled shrieks filling the car. I threw it into drive and floored it, the tires catching, launching me toward the exit ramp. In the rearview mirror, the hooded figures grew smaller, framed in the dying glow of the lamps. The tall one lifted the shovel, resting it on his shoulder, and stood perfectly still as the lot disappeared into darkness. The gagged man thrashed so hard the car rocked. My hands shook on the wheel, vision blurring with tears. I should have gone back. I should have done something. But all I could do was drive, the highway opening ahead like an endless tunnel, the screams in the back seat drowning out every other sound. I didn't stop until Portland. By then, the man in my back seat was still, silent. And when I finally pulled into a gas station under the fluorescent lights, heart clawing its way out of my chest, I turned to look at him. The tape around his wrists had been cut, the gag was gone, and the seat was empty. When people talk about creepy places around Eugene, everyone always brings up the woods, or Skinner's Butte after dark, or the little backroads that snake off into nowhere. But the place that always made my skin crawl was the old paper mill. It sat just outside of town, tucked between the river and a patch of blackberry-choked forest, a gray skeleton of concrete and steel left behind after the 90s. They said the company folded after a chemical spill, that workers got sick and lawsuits dragged it under. Nobody ever tore the place down. It just sat there, rotting. I'd driven past it a dozen times with my mom when I was younger. Even from the highway, you could see the smokestack leaning over the tree line, like it was waiting to fall. The windows were shattered, rust streaks running down the walls like veins. I never once thought about going inside. But then college happened, and with it came Mason. Mason was the kind of guy who thrived on bad ideas. Tall, wiry, always wearing a grin that told you he knew he could talk you into anything. He was obsessed with urbex, urban exploration, sneaking into old buildings, filming it, posting shaky footage online like he was starring in his own found footage movie. His sidekick was Riley, who was more into the tech side. He had a decent camera, a mic he'd borrowed from the media lab, and he treated everything like it was an episode of some YouTube documentary. And then there was me. I wasn't into trespassing, wasn't into breaking the law, wasn't into getting tetanus climbing around rusted beams, but Mason had a way of dragging people along. "It's easy," he said that night, leaning across the table at the diner. 15 minutes outside town. Nobody goes there. We'll be in and out. Just film some footage, get some photos. If we post it at the right time, it'll blow up." Riley nodded enthusiastically, already picturing the edit in his head. "Think about it. Creepy industrial vibe, graffiti, shadows. People love that stuff. We'll cut in some history, talk about the spill. Bam, 10,000 views." I shook my head. "People squat in those places, or use them to deal. You want to get stabbed?" Mason just grinned wider. "Then we'll get stabbed on camera. Viral gold." That was Mason, and that's how I found myself at midnight, crammed in his beat-up Civic, driving down a cracked access road lined with blackberry brambles, a backpack at my feet, a pit in my stomach. The mill loomed out of the dark like the bones of some massive animal. 5 stories tall, windows shattered, its smokestack tilted. The lot around it was overgrown with weeds breaking through asphalt, broken pallets piled near rusting barrels. The place was enormous, hulking, and in the glow of Mason's headlights, it looked less like a building and more like a warning. He killed the lights before we reached the fence, coasting the car into the shadows. "See? Easy," he whispered, like he was proud of himself. I stared at the chain-link fence topped with sagging barbed wire. A section had already been cut open, the edges curled back. "Somebody's already been here," I muttered. "Exactly," Mason said, slipping out of the car. "If they can get in, so can we." Riley was already slinging his camera over his shoulder, testing the mic. His excitement was obvious, and it made me feel even more like the killjoy. But I followed them, ducking through the fence, the wire snagging my hoodie as I squeezed through. The air was colder inside the lot, heavy with the smell of mold and rust. Gravel crunched under our shoes. The front doors of the mill were hanging crooked, one barely clinging to its hinges. Mason shoved it, and it groaned open with a sound like metal screaming. The first breath I took inside made me gag. Wet concrete, mildew, and something chemical, like the bottom of an old swimming pool. Our flashlights carved tunnels through the dark, bouncing off rusting machines in puddles of stagnant water. "Holy crap," Riley whispered, already rolling. His light glinted across conveyor belts tangled with vines, staircases coated in rust, walls layered with graffiti. Some of it was old and faded. Some of it was fresh, the paint still glossy. Mason grinned into Riley's lens. "Eugene Paper Mill, shut down in '97. Locals say it's haunted. We're here to prove them wrong." "Haunted my ass," I muttered, scanning the shadows. We moved deeper, our footsteps echoing. The silence was the worst part. Not quiet like a forest with owls or insects. This was empty, suffocating silence, broken only by drips of water plinking into puddles. We climbed a metal staircase, groaning under our weight. On the second floor, the air was colder. Long hallways stretched into darkness, lined with broken office doors, their glass panels shattered. Papers were scattered across the floor like confetti, curling yellow at the edges. "Check this out," Riley whispered, zooming in on a door. The letters had peeled off, but you could still make out supervisor. Inside, a desk was overturned, a filing cabinet on its side, drawers hanging open. But what made my stomach drop was the pile of blankets in the corner. Not old. Not abandoned for 20 years. Fresh. A crumpled fast food bag lay beside them, fries still inside. A half-empty water bottle leaned against the wall. "Guys," I said quietly, my light trembling. "Somebody's living here." Mason's grin faltered for the first time. Riley lowered the camera. "That's like, from today," Riley whispered. The silence pressed heavier, and I felt my pulse quicken. "We should leave," I said firmly. "Now. This isn't abandoned. This isn't ours." Mason tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. "Relax. They're not here. Probably just a homeless dude. We'll be in and out." But his eyes betrayed him. He kept flicking toward the dark ends of the hallway. We moved cautiously now, our lights darting across walls scrawled with graffiti. Most of it was what you'd expect, tags, crude drawings. But one stretch made me stop. Words written over and over in thick black marker. "Get out." Not stylized, not graffiti, just words. Dozens of them, shaky handwriting filling the plaster from floor to ceiling. "Jesus Christ," Riley muttered. Mason swallowed. "Somebody's crazy. Ignore it." But none of us were smiling anymore. The hallway opened into a massive chamber where catwalks crisscrossed above a vat of stagnant water. Rust streaked down the walls, mold spreading like veins. Our flashlights cut across a far wall and froze. Words again, huge this time, painted in red. "We see you." The letters stretched 10 feet tall, dripping down the concrete. "All right," I said, backing away. "That's it, we're leaving." Even Mason didn't argue this time. Riley panned his camera one last time, then turned toward the stairs. That's when it started. Footsteps. Not ours. Above us. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. We froze, our lights snapping upward. The catwalk was empty, but the sound kept going, metal groaning under weight, pacing back and forth above us. Riley's whisper cracked. "You heard that, right?" No one answered. Then his camera light flickered, once, twice, and died. The darkness swallowed us. I heard Mason's breath hitch, Riley's curse, my own heart pounding. My flashlight beam shook as I swept it upward again. The catwalk was empty now, silent. Then, from the hallway behind us, a metallic clatter echoed, like something being dragged. "Run," I whispered. We bolted, boots slamming against concrete, our lights darting wildly across rust and graffiti. I could hear footsteps behind us, not running, just walking, steady. We burst into the main chamber on the ground floor, lungs burning. The entrance doors loomed across the expanse. Mason sprinted ahead, yanking on one. It screeched but didn't budge. He cursed, shoving harder. Then Riley screamed. I spun. His light had fallen across something I hadn't seen before. Boot prints, fresh, tracked through the dust. 3 sets, side by side, leading deeper into the mill, not away from us, toward us. And Riley's scream cut off as his light crashed to the ground. When I swung mine back, he was gone. Just gone. When Riley's scream cut off, the silence that replaced it was worse than any sound I've ever heard. 1 second he was there, light bobbing across the concrete, breath ragged in my ears. The next, nothing. His flashlight lay on its side, beam rolling weakly across the ground, catching nothing but dust and rusted pipes. I froze, chest locked, unable to breathe. Mason spun in circles, shouting his name. His voice echoed through the mill, bouncing off walls until it felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. "Riley." No answer. The sound of footsteps came again, deliberate, heavy, somewhere above us, pacing the catwalks. Slow, measured, like whoever it was wanted us to hear. Mason grabbed my arm, eyes wide, sweat beading on his forehead. He's screwing with us. He's hiding. He thinks it's funny. But his voice cracked, betraying the lie. I swept my flashlight wildly. The boot prints we'd seen a moment ago seemed to multiply under the beam. Fresh tracks everywhere, overlapping, leading deeper into the shadows. My stomach dropped when I realized some of them weren't dusty prints at all. They were wet, as if whoever made them had just stepped through water. And then I noticed something else. The prints weren't just leading toward us. They circled us. My throat closed. "Mason," I whispered, "we're not alone." He shook his head violently, refusing to accept it. He grabbed Riley's camera from the ground and shoved it into my chest. "We find him. We don't leave without him." Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my feet followed him, deeper into the mill. Our lights swept broken stairwells and rusting machines, graffiti that looked more like warnings now than art. Each echo, each drip of water felt amplified. I couldn't tell if the sounds were ahead of us, behind us, or inside my skull. We turned a corner into a narrow corridor lined with old offices. The windows were shattered, desks overturned, papers crumbling on the floor. And there, just at the edge of our light, as something moved, a shadow darted across the hall. "Riley," Mason's voice cracked as he lunged forward. "Is that you?" No answer. I wanted to hold him back, but he was already running, boots crashing across the floor, flashlight beam jerking. I chased him, heart slamming against my ribs. We burst into a wider chamber, and my light caught movement again. Not Riley. A figure stood across the room, half hidden in shadow. Tall, gaunt, clothes hanging loose, head cocked unnaturally to one side. I froze, breath caught in my throat. The flashlight beam jittered as my hand shook, but I couldn't look away. The man raised one hand slowly. Something long and sharp glinted in it, a length of rebar, rusted and jagged at the tip. "Mason," I whispered hoarsely. "Back up." But Mason didn't listen. He took a step forward, light fixed on the figure. "Hey, where's our friend?" His voice was high, shaking. "What did you do with him?" The figure didn't answer, didn't move, just tilted his head the other way, watching. Then another sound came, behind us. Footsteps. I whipped my light around. Another figure was emerging from the shadows, crawling through a doorway on hands and knees, before standing, slow and deliberate. His eyes caught the beam for a split second, pale and feral. He held something too, not a weapon exactly, but a length of pipe, heavy and dented. My breath hitched. There were two. Mason realized it the same moment I did. His bravado cracked, his voice breaking. We should go." The first figure stepped forward, the rebar scraping across the concrete. The second blocked the corridor behind us. My chest constricted. And then, from somewhere deeper in the building, faint and muffled, a scream. Riley. Mason snapped toward the sound, panic written across his face. "He's alive. We have to..." But the figures were closing in. I grabbed his arm hard, dragging him toward the one exit left, a stairwell leading down. He resisted for a second, torn, then followed as the rebar scraped dangerously close. We bolted down the stairs 2 at a time, the rusted railing rattling under our grip. The air grew colder, damp. We burst into the basement level, beams of our lights bouncing across a maze of concrete pillars and old machinery. The smell hit me then. Rot. Thick, cloying, unmistakable. Mason gagged. Oh, God. Our lights swept the space and froze. Cots, dozens of them. Thin mattresses, stained blankets, plastic bottles filled with cloudy liquid, piles of clothing, some ripped, some stiff with dirt, and along the far wall, cages. I felt bile rise in my throat. 3 metal cages, built crudely from chain link and rebar, each just tall enough for a person to crouch inside. One was empty. The second held scraps of clothing, shredded and dark with stains I didn't want to name. The third was occupied. Riley. He was crumpled inside, duct tape wrapped around his wrists, blood on his temple. His mouth was gagged, his eyes wide and wet in the beam of our lights. He jerked against the tape, muffled cries spilling out, desperate and frantic. Jesus Christ. Mason sprinted forward, dropping to his knees, fumbling with the lock. It's okay, we'll get you out. My body screamed warnings, but I ran to him anyway, hands trembling as I tried to rip at the lock. Riley thrashed, shaking his head violently, eyes darting past us, behind us. I understood a second too late. The rebar whistled through the air. It missed my head by inches, slamming into the pillar beside me with a metallic crack. Sparks flew. I staggered back, heart exploding in my chest. The figures were in the basement with us now. 2 shadows moving between pillars, weapons scraping the ground. Mason screamed, fumbling with the lock. Come on, come on! I grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor, brandishing it with shaking hands. My light jittered across the concrete, catching glimpses. Bare feet slapping against the floor, hunched shoulders, pale faces streaked with dirt. They moved with purpose, with patience, like hunters. One stepped into full view, rebar dragging behind him, eyes locked on me. And then another sound. More footsteps, from the stairs. I turned, stomach dropping. More were coming, at least 3, maybe 4. Their shapes filled the stairwell, descending slow, unhurried, like they knew there was nowhere left to run. Mason screamed again, yanking, desperately at the lock, tears in his eyes. Riley thrashed, muffled sobs breaking through. I backed up, pipe shaking in my grip, surrounded by shadows that multiplied with each flick of the light. The smell of rot thickened, the footsteps closed in, and then the lights overhead flickered, once, twice, and died. Darkness swallowed us whole. Oregon's Coast Range looks beautiful from the highway. Rolling green ridges, endless pines, the occasional ribbon of mist snaking through the treetops. But once you leave the road, once you step past the tree line and let the forest swallow you, the beauty turns into something else. The silence is thicker, the canopy presses down, you lose sight of the sky. The deeper you go, the more you start to realize that people don't belong there anymore. Not since the loggers left. I should have known better. My cousin Levi was always the reckless one. He was 2 years older than me, and ever since we were kids, he dared me into doing things I swore I'd never do. Jumping from the bridge into the river, sneaking into the high school at night, driving out to abandoned barns just to see if they were haunted. I was the one with the common sense, but I followed anyway. That's what cousins do. When Levi suggested we hike the decommissioned logging trail west of Tillamook, I told him it was a bad idea. Those trails aren't maintained. Half of them don't even show up on maps anymore. That's the point, he said, grinning. Pure Oregon wilderness. No tourists. Just us in the trees. Come on, man. One weekend. We'll camp out, crack some beers, get off the grid. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We set out on a Friday afternoon, packs on our backs, boots crunching over gravel as we left the dirt road behind and stepped onto the overgrown trail. The first stretch was easy. The logging companies had cut wide swaths decades ago, and even though nature had reclaimed a lot of it, the path was clear enough to follow. Ferns brushed our legs, and blackberry brambles clawed at our jeans. Sunlight filtered down in weak golden beams. Levi led the way, humming under his breath, his energy endless. He carried a hatchet on his belt, more for the look of it than necessity. He always liked to play the part, the outdoorsman, the adventurer. I carried most of the gear. We hiked for hours, the trees growing taller, the trail narrowing. Every once in a while, we'd pass rusting remnants of the past. A length of steel cable half buried in moss, the skeletal remains of a skidder, graffiti sprayed across an old oil drum. Ghosts of the logging days. By dusk, we found a clearing, a flat patch where the ground dropped away into a steep ravine. We set up camp, built a fire, and cooked hot dogs on sticks like we were 10 years old again. Levi cracked a couple of beers, handed me one, and we sat in the firelight, listening to the forest breathe. "You ever think about how many people probably worked out here?" he asked, staring into the flames. "Whole crews, felling trees, hauling logs, and now look, gone. Just empty woods, like nobody was ever here." I nodded, sipping my beer. "That's what happens. Nature takes it back." He smirked. "Not everything." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared into the dark beyond the fire, where the trees stood like silent sentries. Then he grinned, shaking it off. "Nothing, man. Just messing with you." We laughed, but later that night, as I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the wind move through the canopy, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The forest was too quiet. No owls, no crickets, no distant coyotes. Just silence. The next morning, we broke camp and pushed deeper. The trail narrowed to little more than a game path, half hidden by ferns. Levi swung his hatchet occasionally, chopping vines out of the way, whistling tunelessly. I followed, trying not to think about how far we were from cell service. By midday, we stumbled onto something that made us stop cold. An old logging truck sat rusting in the trees, half swallowed by moss. Its windshield was shattered, its tires rotted down to nothing. A tarp was stretched beside it, tied between two trees, sagging under the weight of rainwater. Underneath, a fire pit ringed with stones, fresh ash scattered around it. Levi crouched, sifting through the ash. He held up a stick, its end blackened. This was burned recently. I scanned the area, heart pounding. "Levi, somebody's here." He grinned. "So? People camp out, hunters, other hikers." I shook my head. "There's no reason to camp way out here. Not unless you don't want to be found." That wiped the grin from his face. He stood slowly, eyes flicking toward the deeper woods. For the first time, I saw doubt crack through his bravado. We kept moving, quieter now. The trail curved, weaving through thick stands of cedar. That's when I noticed the prints. Boot prints pressed deep in the mud, large, heavy. 3 sets side by side, leading the same direction we were headed. I stopped dead. "Levi." He crouched, tracing the edge of one. His voice was low. Fresh. Real fresh. The forest seemed to lean closer, the silence pressing in heavier. "Let's turn back," I whispered. But Levi shook his head, jaw set. "We've come this far. Whoever they are, we won't even cross paths. Just stay sharp." I wanted to argue, but something in his tone told me it wouldn't matter. We kept walking. An hour later, the trail opened into another clearing. Rusting machinery stood like skeletons. A crane collapsed on its side, a winch half buried in the ground. Tarps flapped in the breeze, strung between trees. A clothesline hung limp, shirts and pants swaying faintly. And then I saw it. A pile near the base of a cedar. At first I thought it was rags. Then my stomach dropped. Shoes. Dozens of them. Mud-caked boots, sneakers, sandals. Some small, child-sized. All tossed in a heap, stiff with dirt and age. My throat tightened. Levi. He was staring at another pile nearby. Backpacks. Torn open, spilling their contents. Clothes, water bottles, notebooks. He swallowed hard, eyes wide. This isn't hunters. My skin crawled. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. And then the sound came. A snap, a branch breaking from the tree line. We whipped our lights up. For a split second, I saw them. 3 figures standing just beyond the edge of the clearing. Men. Broad-shouldered, clothes filthy, faces hidden under caps. Watching us. Levi's voice cracked. "Run!" I don't remember moving, but suddenly we were sprinting, crashing through underbrush, branches whipping our faces. My pack slammed against my back. My lungs burned. Behind us, heavy boots pounded the earth. We didn't stop until we burst onto another stretch of the old trail, doubled over, gasping. My chest felt like it was going to split open. Levi grabbed my shoulder, eyes wild. "They were waiting," he panted. The woods were silent again. Too silent. And then faint, but unmistakable, the sound of boots crunching closer. Levi's grip on my shoulder was iron tight, his breath ragged. We stood frozen on the overgrown trail, our hearts thundering in unison, every nerve screaming at us to move. Then the sound came again. The crunch of boots on dirt, steady and unhurried. Not running, not chasing, just following. "They're toying with us," Levi whispered, voice hoarse. The woods loomed, thick and endless. Every tree looked the same, every shadow stretched wide. My body wanted to bolt, but I knew if we sprinted blindly, we'd lose the trail and be swallowed whole by the forest. That might be worse. "Which way?" I gasped. Levi scanned the undergrowth, his jaw clenched. Then he tugged my arm, dragging me off the trail into the ferns. "This way." We crouched low, moving fast but careful, our boots sinking into moss, branches snagging our clothes. My pack felt like it weighed 100 pounds, every can and flashlight clattering like a beacon. Behind us, the footsteps grew fainter, then stopped. I thought maybe we'd shaken them. Then a sound cut through the silence. A whistle, low, drawn out. Another answered from deeper in the woods. They were signaling to each other. Levi's eyes met mine, wide with fear but blazing with determination. He pressed a finger to his lips, then gestured forward. We crept, knees bent, breath shallow. The silence was so heavy I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Minutes dragged. The forest pressed tighter. Then the smell hit. Smoke, faint but real. Levi crouched, parting the ferns with his hand. Oh my God. I leaned beside him and saw the clearing. A camp. Tarps stretched between trees. Makeshift tables built from pallets. A fire pit still glowing with embers. And beyond it, a structure, a shed cobbled together from corrugated metal and logs. Beside it were cages. 3 of them. Chain-link squares, crudely built, tall enough to stand in. One was empty. The second held a bundle I couldn't look at too long. Bones, scraps of clothing. The third held a man. He was gaunt, his beard matted, eyes sunken. His wrists were bound, his lips cracked. He stared at the fire like he'd forgotten how to lift his head. I felt bile rise in my throat. Levi grabbed my arm. "We have to get out of here." But then the man in the cage turned his head slowly, eyes catching ours. For a second, I thought he was about to scream. Instead, he raised one trembling finger to his lips. A twig snapped behind us. We spun. A man stood in the shadows 10 feet away. His clothes were filthy, his beard thick, his cap pulled low. In his hand was a hunting knife, the blade blackened with age. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He just smiled, slow and broken, like he was savoring the moment. Levi shoved me hard. "Run!" We tore through the underbrush, branches slashing our faces, lungs burning. Shouts erupted behind us, rough voices, angry and loud. Boots thundered against the ground. I don't remember how long we ran. The forest blurred into green and black, my legs numb, my chest on fire. We didn't stop until Levi yanked me behind a fallen log, both of us collapsing into the dirt. We lay there, gasping, hearts pounding, listening. The voices were closer. 2 men arguing, their words low but clear. Saw them go this way. Don't matter, they'll circle back, they always do. Levi's grip on my wrist tightened. His lips brushed my ear. They've done this before. The realization hit like a hammer. The shoes, the backpacks, the cages, This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a system, a hunt, and we were the prey. We waited, barely daring to breathe, until the voices faded. Then Levi pulled me up, his eyes blazing. "We're not dying out here. You hear me? We keep moving. We get to the ridge. There's a road on the other side." We stumbled on, half crawling, half running, the forest never ending. Every sound felt like it belonged to them. The crack of branches, the rustle of ferns. My nerves were raw, my vision tunneling. Then the ground gave way. I slid down a slope, dirt and rocks tearing at my arms. I hit bottom hard, the wind knocked out of me. Pain shot through my ribs. Above, Levi scrambled down after me, swearing. I pushed myself up, gasping, and froze. We were in another clearing. At the center, nailed to a tree, was a body. A man stripped to his waist, skin gray and torn. His chest was caved in, his arms twisted. His head lolled to the side, mouth open in a silent scream. Levi staggered, face pale. Jesus Christ. Before I could speak, movement flickered at the edge of the clearing. Figures. 3 of them. Stepping from the shadows, weapons in their hands. We were trapped. Levi shoved me back, his voice breaking. "Go! I'm not leaving you. Go!" he screamed, eyes blazing with something I'd never seen before. "Get out! Tell someone! Don't let this—" His words cut off as one of the men lunged. Levi swung his hatchet, connecting with a sickening thud. The man went down, but the others surged forward. Levi roared, swinging again, buying me seconds. I stumbled backward, tears blurring my vision. My cousin, my brother, in all but blood, stood against them with nothing but a hatchet and raw fury. The last thing I saw was him disappearing into the swarm, his voice ripping through the trees as he screamed my name. I ran. I don't remember how. I don't remember how long. The forest was a blur, the sky bleeding gray with dawn. My legs moved on their own, my chest a furnace, my soul splitting with every step. By the time I saw the road, I was half dead. A logging truck rumbled by, brakes screeching as the driver spotted me. He jumped out, shouting, grabbing my shoulders. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob. They called the police. They sent search teams. But they never found Levi. Not a body. Not a trace. And sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I hear it again. The whistles echoing through the trees, answering each other in the dark. The Columbia River Gorge is beautiful in the daylight, but at night, in thick fog, it feels like another planet. You can't see the cliffs, can't see the river, can't even see the sky. Just the constant swirl of white pressing against your windshield, swallowing the road, turning headlights into 2 useless beams that vanish a few feet ahead. That's where Emma and I were the night everything went wrong. We'd left Spokane late, trying to get back to Portland in one long drive. It should have been 5 hours, maybe 6 with traffic, but construction and winter weather stretched it out. By the time we hit Hood River, the fog was so thick I couldn't push past 40 without risking running straight off the road. My shoulders ached from clenching the wheel, and Emma kept rubbing her eyes, saying she couldn't keep them open. "Let's stop," she said finally, voice soft but sharp. "Please, Cal, just pull over, find a motel, finish tomorrow." I wanted to push through. I hated the thought of sleeping in a stranger's bed when ours was only an hour away. But the fog didn't let up, and exhaustion sat heavy behind my eyes. I sighed, gave in, and nodded. For the next 20 minutes, there was nothing but highway and fog. Then, like an apparition, a flicker of neon glowed through the mist. Riverview Motel. Vacancy. Half the sign was dark, buzzing faintly. An arrow pointed down a side road that disappeared straight into the fog. Emma leaned forward. "Thank God," I pulled off. Gravel crunched under the tires. The fog thinned just enough for us to make out the building. A single strip of rooms, maybe 10, all facing the lot, office at one end. One overhead bulb flickered weakly above the parking spaces. 2 cars sat there, both coated in dew like they hadn't moved in days. "Looks like the kind of place you don't wake up from," I muttered. Emma shot me a look. It looks like a bed, and that's all I need. I parked. The lot was so quiet it felt dead. No sound of the river, no wind, just muffled silence pressing in. Inside the office, the air smelled of coffee and cleaning chemicals. A man sat behind the counter, middle-aged, pale, his hair slicked back. His smile stretched wide but didn't touch his eyes. "Evening," he said slowly, like he was practicing. "You folks need a room?" "Yeah," I said, sliding my ID and card. He stared at them a beat too long, then pulled a heavy metal key from a pegboard. Not a card. A brass tag stamped with the number 6 dangled from it. "Room 6, he said, sliding it across. His smile never faltered. "Lock up tight tonight." Emma frowned. "Why?" His gaze flicked to her, then back to me. "Fog brings people through. Not all of them good. Safe or locked." I forced a nod. "Thanks." We crossed the lot. Room 6 was near the end. Its paint was peeling, number nailed on crooked. Inside, the air was damp, tinged with mildew. A double bed sat against her. One wall, a dresser with no mirror, a table with 2 mismatched chairs. No TV, no art, just blank white walls with paint curling in the corners. Emma dropped her bag and groaned. "Perfect." I checked the door. The knob turned stiffly. The deadbolt slid with a screech. The chain latch dangled broken. I tested the deadbolt twice anyway, the clerk's words gnawing at me. "Lock up tight." We changed, killed the light, and lay in the dark. The fog pressed against the thin curtains, so dense the glow from the lot vanished. I was drifting when I heard it. A sound, faint, muffled. At first I thought Emma was whispering, but when I turned, she was asleep, her breathing slow. I held still. The sound came again, a voice, hoarse, coming from the wall. I sat up, pressed my ear to the plaster. Words filtered through. "Please." "No." "Please." Followed by sobbing. My stomach clenched. Emma stirred, blinking. "Cal? What is it?" "Listen." She pressed her ear to. Her eyes widened. "That's someone crying." We pulled back, staring at each other. I tried to rationalize. Guests. Bad fight. But then another voice joined. Higher, frantic. "Let me out." Emma slapped her hand over her mouth. Chains rattled, metal dragged against metal. Then silence. Emma whispered, "We have to leave." I nodded, went to the door, unlocked the deadbolt, and twisted the knob. It didn't move. I tried again, harder. The knob spun, the lock clicked, but the door didn't open. "It's stuck," I muttered. Emma yanked it herself until the frame rattled. Nothing. Her voice cracked. "It's locked from the outside." My stomach dropped. I checked the window. Condensation fogged the glass. Screws gleamed in the frame, drilled in from the outside. No way out. Emma's breathing quickened. "Cal, this isn't a motel. It's a trap." Before I could answer, footsteps crunched in the gravel. They stopped outside our door. The knob turned once, then again. Emma clutched my arm, nails digging deep. A shadow shifted behind the curtain, blotting out what little light the fog gave. Whoever it was leaned close. And then a whisper, right at the door. "You're not supposed to be in there yet." Emma's nails dug into my arm, her breath shallow against my shoulder. The whisper at the door still echoed inside my skull. The knob rattled again, slow, deliberate, testing. The door groaned in its frame, but didn't open. Then silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. We stayed frozen in the dark, straining to hear. Footsteps retreated across the gravel. A van door creaked open, slammed shut. An engine coughed to life, then faded back into the fog. Emma whispered, "Cal, what the hell is this place?" I didn't answer. My tongue was dry, my chest tight. I tried the knob again, even threw my shoulder against the door. It shuddered, but didn't give. The screws in the window glinted faintly when I pulled the curtain. The room was sealed like a box. Emma paced, hugging herself. "We're trapped. We're really trapped." The silence stretched until it hummed in my ears. Then faint through the wall came a sound. A sob, a low moan, muffled, broken. It rose, frantic. "Please, don't, please." The cry cut off with a sharp metallic crack, the sound of a prod or something worse. Emma clapped her hands over her ears, shaking her head. I pulled her close, whispering, "Don't listen. Don't listen." Hours seemed to drag by. We sat on the bed, backs pressed to the wall, listening to footsteps in the lot, the slam of van doors, muffled cries. Every so often a shadow would pass the curtain, pausing just long enough to make us hold our breath, then moving on. At some point, exhaustion pulled at my eyelids. I fought it, forcing myself awake, watching the door. That's when the deadbolt clicked. The door swung open. 2 men filled the frame, one tall and gaunt, his face shadowed beneath a cap, his eyes sunk deep in his skull. The other broad-shouldered, thick arms roped with muscle, his clothes stained dark. Emma whimpered. "Out," the tall one rasped. His voice was dry, like sandpaper. I stood, fists clenched, but the broad one raised something that crackled faintly. A cattle prod. Sparks flared blue. Emma's nails dug into my wrist. Her voice cracked. "Please, we'll go." "Out," the tall man repeated. They herded us into the fog. The gravel was cold under our bare feet, the air thick with damp. Vans sat lined along the edge of the lot, their back doors hanging open. One door shut as we passed, muffled sobbing leaking through the metal. The clerk sat in the office sipping coffee. His eyes followed us through the glass, but he didn't move. Didn't lift a hand to help. He just sipped and smiled faintly. Emma's breath hitched. Past the lot, behind the line of rooms, loomed a squat metal building, a warehouse or storage shed, corrugated siding, rusted through in places. Its double doors yawned open, yellow light spilling out, cutting through the fog. Inside, the stench hit first. Sweat, blood, rot. The floor was concrete, slick in places, stained dark. Along the walls stood cages, crudely welded from chain link and rebar. Inside were people. Some sat slumped, heads bowed, wrists bound. Others rocked back and forth, eyes glazed, lips moving in broken whispers. A few stared as we entered, hollow eyes locking on us. Emma's breath caught in a sob. The tall man shoved us into an empty cage near the corner. The gate slammed, the padlock clicked. The sound echoed like a verdict. Emma pressed against me, shaking so hard I thought her bones might splinter. The tall man crouched, his face close to the bars. His eyes were flat, empty. "Morning," he rasped. "That's when." He tapped the lock once, then rose and walked away. The others didn't speak. Only one man, across from us, lifted his head. His hair was matted, his beard gray. His eyes burned sharp, alive. He pressed a finger to his lips, then pointed with a trembling hand toward the far corner of our cage. I frowned, following his gesture. There, where the chain link met the floor, rust spread wide, eating through the bolts. Hope sparked. When the guards left, when the warehouse quieted, I shifted, blocking Emma from view, and tested the corner. The metal wobbled, rust flaked, loose. Emma saw. Her lips parted in a soundless gasp. "Can you—" "Shh." I worked slowly, pulling at the bolt piece by piece. My fingers bled, rust biting into skin. Boots thundered outside. We froze. The doors opened. 2 guards dragged a woman between them. She sobbed against a gag, her feet stumbling. They shoved her into a cage near the center, slammed the lock, and left. Her eyes found mine, desperate, pleading. Then she collapsed, weeping silently. I turned back to the bolt, pulling, straining. At last, with a faint screech, it gave. The panel bent outward, just enough for us to squeeze through. Emma's hand clutched mine, tears spilling. Before I could whisper the plan, a whistle shrieked outside. High, shrill, answered by another farther away. The warehouse lights flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed us. Screams erupted. Chains rattled. Prisoners sobbed, fists pounding cages. Flashlights flared, beams cutting through the dark. Guards stormed in, barking orders. They yanked cages open, dragging people out. Emma's body trembled against me. "Cal, now," I whispered. We squeezed through the bent panel, hitting the concrete hard. Crawling low, we darted toward the far wall, hiding behind a stack of pallets. Flashlights swept past. A prod cracked. A man screamed, cut off with a thud. Emma whimpered. I pressed a hand over her mouth, my heart hammering. From our hiding place, I saw them lining people up. Shackled, stumbling, herded toward the doors. Morning. That's when. Emma's nails dug into my arm. Her eyes begged me. "What do we do?" I whispered. "We run. Together." Chaos broke when one prisoner bolted, sprinting blindly. Guards shouted, beams swinging. In the confusion, we crawled, then ran, bolting toward the open door. The fog curled inside, pale and endless. Freedom. We were almost there when Emma tripped. I spun. She lay sprawled, ankle twisted, face twisted in pain. "Go!" she screamed. I hauled her up, draping her arm over my shoulder. We stumbled forward, but flashlights converged. A whistle shrieked. The tall man stepped into the doorway, rebar in his hand. His eyes gleamed cold. "Back," he rasped. We froze. Emma sobbed, clutching me. Then I saw it. A cattle prod lying on the floor, dropped in the chaos. I shoved Emma hard toward the shadows. "Hide!" She screamed my name as I lunged, snatching the prod, swinging. Sparks cracked. The tall man staggered. Boots thundered. Hands grabbed me, yanking, tearing. I fought, screaming, sparks flying. Through the blur, I saw Emma. Dragged from the shadows, bound, gagged, her eyes wide with terror. "No!" I roared, fighting, tearing free. But rough hands slammed me down. My face hit concrete. Stars burst. A boot pinned my chest. The tall man crouched close, breath hot and foul. "Morning," he whispered. They dragged Emma into the line. Her eyes locked on mine, wild, pleading. I screamed until my throat split, but they pulled her into the fog. Her figure swallowed, her cries muffled. When the sun rose, I stumbled down the highway, broken and bleeding. A trucker found me, pulled over, shouting, asking what happened. But my voice was gone. They never found Emma. And some nights, when fog blankets the gorge, I still hear her voice through the walls, muffled begging, chains rattling, and that whisper at the door, "You're not supposed to be in there yet." There are places in Oregon where the land feels too wide, too empty, like there's nothing to hold you if something goes wrong. The stretch outside Bend is like that. Flat fields, dry grass, and farmhouses scattered miles apart. When we rented one for spring break, we thought the emptiness meant freedom. No neighbors to complain about noise, no one to care if we partied. What we didn't realize was that the emptiness also meant no one would hear us scream. There were 5 of us. Me, my girlfriend Allison, my roommate Derek, and 2 others from campus, Marcus and Jenna. We were all juniors at OSU, sick of dorm life, sick of midterms, ready for cheap beer, and a week without lectures. Derek found the listing. Rustic farmhouse outside Bend. Sleep 6. Quiet. Secluded. $85 a night. Secluded is code for creepy, Jenna said in the car, scrolling through the photos. They showed a squat 2-story house with chipped white paint and a sagging porch. Inside, mismatched furniture, peeling wallpaper, and old wooden floors. Nothing special, nothing welcoming either. Marcus laughed from the back seat. Secluded is code for perfect. We can crank music as loud as we want. We all cheered at that. It was dusk when we finally pulled into the gravel drive. The field stretched forever in every direction. No other houses in sight. The farmhouse stood silent, windows dark, shingles curling on the roof. A barn leaned on one side, its doors chained shut. "Looks like a murder scene," Allison muttered, brushing her auburn hair back nervously. Derek grinned, jangling the key he'd picked up from a lockbox. "Looks like home." Inside smelled of dust and faint mildew. The living room had a sagging couch and a brick fireplace. The kitchen was narrow, with yellow linoleum peeling up at the corners. Upstairs, 4 bedrooms, small, plain, with creaky doors that didn't quite shut. We dumped our bags, blasted music, cracked beers. The first night felt like a dare. The house groaned in the wind, and every creak made Jenna jump. By midnight, though, the beer dulled nerves, and the farmhouse just felt old, until the scratching started. It was faint at first. A soft, irregular scrape in the walls. Allison froze, bottle halfway to her lips. "Tell me you guys hear that." We all listened. Scrape, scrape, like nails dragging inside the drywall. Derek laughed nervously. "Mice. Every old house has them." But the sound kept up, moving along the wall like it was following us. We banged on the plaster, shouted, but the scratching only paused before starting again, higher up. Jenna's face went pale. "That's not mice. That's bigger." We laughed it off eventually, turned the music louder and tried to ignore it. But when we went to bed, the sounds came back. Scraping. Thumping. Once, Allison swore she heard whispering. The second day, we explored the property. The barn was locked with thick rusted chains. Behind it, fields stretched to the horizon. Nothing but grass and dry dirt. When I asked Derek about the listing, he said the owner just wanted renters to stay out of the barn, insurance thing. That night, it got worse. Around 2 a.m., Marcus shook me awake. His voice was low, tight. "Dude, someone's in the house." I sat up, heart slamming. From the hall came a faint thud, then another. Allison stirred, whispering, "What's happening?" We crept out. Jenna's door was cracked open. She stood inside, pointing at the wall. "There," she hissed. "I heard someone in the wall." We pressed our ears to the plaster. This time, it wasn't scratching. It was shuffling, slow, heavy, moving between rooms. Allison's whisper was sharp. "How can someone be inside the wall?" We tore through the house, searching. In the kitchen, Derek pulled a flashlight and started checking cabinets. Behind one, hidden by warped wood, was a panel. Loose. He pried it back. A crawl space gaped behind it. The beam of his flashlight caught narrow tunnels carved through the walls, wood splintered from years of use. My stomach turned. Someone's been living in here. The air stank. Sweat, dust, rot. On the floor lay a filthy blanket, a half-empty can of beans, and a plastic bottle of water. Jenna backed away, hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, oh my God." Derek swore. "Okay, it's squatters. They'll leave when they know we're here." But when we searched more, we found another panel in the upstairs hall. Then one behind the dresser in Marcus's room. Each open to the same network of crawl spaces. They connected every room, and on the dry wall inside, lining the narrow tunnels, were peepholes. Tiny drilled holes, each aimed into our bedrooms. Allison's voice cracked. "They've been watching us." We sealed the panels as best we could, pushed furniture against them. None of us slept. By morning, we tried to laugh it off, said we'd overreacted. It was just some drifter. But unease clung to everything. Jenna wanted to leave, but Derek insisted we'd lose our money, and that it wasn't dangerous. That night, Marcus disappeared. We woke to his door wide open, bed empty, phone on the floor. His shoes were still by the door, no sign of him. We tore through the house screaming his name. Checked the fields, the barn, the crawl spaces, nothing. Allison found it first. In the crawl space behind the dresser, scrawled into the wood, were names. Dozens of them, carved deep. Some so old the wood had splintered, others fresher. Each a full name and a date. The last name made her scream. It was her brother's. He'd vanished 3 years ago, driving through Bend. Never found. Her knees buckled. She collapsed, sobbing, clawing at the wall like she could dig him out. I pulled her back, heart hammering, bile burning my throat. Jenna whispered, voice breaking, "Oh my God. It's not squatters. It's them. They've always been here." From deep in the crawl space, the sound came again. Scraping. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer. The sound of scraping in the walls froze us where we stood. It wasn't the faint scurrying of mice, not the hollow rattle of pipes. It was slow, steady, Deliberate. Something, or someone, was dragging their fingernails along the inside of the wall, as if to remind us they were there. Allison clutched my arm so hard my skin burned under her nails. Her face was streaked with tears from what she'd just seen. Her brother's name carved into the wood. Marcus was gone. And now the wall seemed to be breathing with us, aware of us. Derek whispered hoarsely, Okay, this is bad. We need to get the fuck out of here. Now." We didn't argue. We tore downstairs, grabbing what little we had. Phones, jackets, car keys. The house seemed to creak with every step we took, groaning like it resented us moving too quickly. When we pushed outside, the fog hit us like a wall. The fields that had stretched wide the day before were smothered in thick white. The car sat in the gravel drive, silent, waiting. I bolted for the driver's seat. Allison and Jenna piled into the back. Derek fumbled with the passenger door, muttering curses under his breath. My hand jammed the key into the ignition, twisting. Nothing. Just a hollow click. I tried again. Click. The lights wouldn't even come on. "Battery's dead," Derek hissed. "No," I said, twisting again, as if sheer will would bring it to life. But it wasn't just dead. The wires under the steering column hung loose, cleanly cut. Someone had sabotaged it. Jenna's breathing grew sharp, fast. "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh..." "Shut up," Derek snapped. "Don't panic." But before he could finish, something hit the side of the car. A heavy thump. We all screamed. I whipped my head to the window. Through the fog, a shadow stood at the edge of the drive. Then another behind it. They weren't running. They weren't charging. Just standing. Watching. "Allison," I whispered. "Stay down." The shadows didn't move. Just lingered, as if they had all the time in the world. Derek's voice cracked. "The barn. We'll hide there." The barn. The one chained shut. I didn't have a better plan. We flung open the doors and bolted, gravel crunching loud under our feet. The fog swallowed everything beyond arm's reach. Behind us, footsteps followed. Slow, steady. They weren't chasing. They were herding. We reached the barn. Derek yanked the chain, cursed, pulled harder. The lock rattled. He braced himself and kicked. Rust gave way. The doors groaned open. Inside, the air reeked of damp earth and something sweet and rotten. Our flashlights flickered weakly across rows of old farm equipment, broken crates, piles of tarps. Get in," I hissed, dragging Allison inside. Jenna stumbled behind us, sobbing. Derek slammed the doors, looping the chain back, through as best he could. For a moment, silence. We all stood there, hearts hammering, trying to calm our breathing. The fog muffled the world outside. Then my beam landed on something in the far corner. A chair, stained dark, shackles bolted to the arms, and on the floor around it, bones, small, fragile. Some broken, some with scraps of cloth still clinging. Allison's gasp tore out of her throat. "Oh my God," Jenna screamed. The sound echoed off the rafters. I clamped a hand over her mouth, whispering, "Quiet." But it was too late. The footsteps outside grew louder, more of them, surrounding the barn. Derek pressed his back to the doors, face pale. They know we're in here." The scraping sound came again. This time, not from the walls. From above. The rafters. I aimed my flashlight up. For a split second, the beam caught movement. A pale face vanishing into the shadows, eyes gleaming, mouth curled into something like a smile. They were already inside. "Allison." "Jenna, go," I shouted. We ran deeper into the barn, weaving between piles of junk. The shadows above moved with us, faint thuds along the beams, always just out of sight. At the back, we found a narrow stairwell leading down. Without thinking, we barreled down into the dark. The air grew colder, damp. The stairs ended in a dirt floor basement, walls lined with stone. Rows of cages filled the room, not empty. Inside them lay piles of clothing, shoes, scraps of hair. And on one wall, scratched into the stone so deep it bled chalky dust, were dozens of names. Some etched decades ago, others fresh enough the grooves were still dark, and there, at the bottom, Allison's brother's name again. Beside it, Marcus's. Allison's scream split the air. From the cages, movement, figures shifting, not dead, not all of them. Eyes glinted in the dark. Hands reached through the bars. Some whispered, voices raw. "Help us, help." Jenna collapsed, sobbing. Derek cursed, backing toward the stairs. Then the door above slammed shut. We were trapped. The sound of boots filled the stairwell, slow, deliberate, coming down. The figures in the cages whimpered, retreating into shadows. They knew what was coming. The first man appeared in the flashlight beam, gaunt, pale, clothes filthy, hair hanging in greasy strands. His eyes were wide, unblinking. He carried a long, rusted hook. Behind him, more figures descended, at least 4. We pressed back against the wall, nowhere to go. Allison clutched my hand, whispering, "Please, please don't let them take me." My chest split open. I would have given anything to protect her. The gaunt man raised his hook, pointing it at us. His voice was low, guttural. "Your turn." We fought. God, we fought. Derek lunged first, grabbing a rusted pipe from the floor, swinging wild. The hook slammed into his shoulder. He screamed, blood spraying. Jenna shrieked, trying to pull him back. I shoved Allison behind me, swinging my flashlight like a weapon. It cracked against one man's jaw, but others swarmed. Hands grabbed, nails clawed. Their strength was unreal, desperate. Jenna was dragged first. Her screams cut the dark as they pulled her toward a cage. Derek tried to crawl, but a boot crushed his spine, pinning him. His eyes found mine, wide with terror, before they hauled him back. "Allison!" I roared, grabbing her, pulling, fighting. She thrashed in my arms, screaming my name as they tore her from me. Fingers dug into her hair, yanking her away. I lunged, tearing free, slamming into the man with the hook. Pain exploded in my ribs as the metal slammed across me. Allison's scream ripped through the basement, echoing off the stone. "Cal!" And then she was gone, swallowed into the cages. Hours later, I woke on the dirt floor, alone. My ribs throbbed, blood caked on my shirt. The cages were silent, empty, the figures gone. The names on the wall glared in the weak beam of my dying flashlight. New ones had been added. Jenna, Derek, and beside them, scratched deep, Allison. I stumbled up the stairs, through the barn, into the pale morning fog. The field stretched wide and empty. The car sat gutted, useless, no one in sight. I walked until my legs gave out, until a farmer found me on the road muttering nonsense. When police searched the farmhouse, they said it was abandoned. Empty. No cages, no carvings, just dust and peeling paint. No one believed me. But I remember Allison's scream, and every time I close my eyes, I see her name on that wall. When I signed up to volunteer at the Salem Haven shelter, I thought I was doing something good. I was 21, a sociology student at Willamette University, and desperate to pad my resume with something meaningful. Community engagement, my advisor said. Grassroots exposure. The Haven looked normal enough from the outside. A renovated brick building on the edge of downtown. A green awning stretched across the door. A faded mural of clasped hands on the side wall. Inside, the lobby smelled of bleach and burnt coffee. A corkboard by the entrance displayed motivational quotes and lists of donors of the month. The director, a woman named Miss Warren, met me at the desk. She was in her late 50s, hair streaked silver, glasses on a chain. She had the kind of presence that filled a room. Stern, polite. A smile just wide enough to seem welcoming without ever softening her sharp eyes. "You'll be helping with intakes, meals, and night rounds," she explained briskly. "We take pride in discipline here. These people need structure more than anything else." These people. The phrase sat wrong in my gut, but I nodded. The first few days, I did what I was told. I signed in new arrivals, handed out meals, helped set up bunks. Most of the residents were men in their 40s and 50s, weathered by years on the street. Some younger ones too. A girl no older than 17 who never spoke. A veteran with burns across his arms. A mother with a toddler who clung to her leg. I liked working the kitchen best. Cooking bulk meals was mindless, and the residents relaxed when you handed them a plate. They talked more, thanked you, sometimes smiled. But there was an undercurrent too. Something nervous. An edge that made conversations short. One morning, I asked a man named Curtis why he kept glancing at the doors during breakfast. He leaned closer, eyes darting around. "Don't stay after dark," he whispered. "Don't go downstairs." Miss Warren appeared behind me then, hand on my shoulder. "Curtis, eat your meal," she said smoothly. Her nails pressed just a little too firmly into my shirt before she let go. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The first real crack came a week later. I'd just finished helping with evening cleanup when I realized I hadn't seen Martin, one of the regulars, at dinner. Martin was 60 maybe, gray beard, always humming old blues songs. I asked around. Nobody had seen him since morning check-in. I asked Miss Warren. She smiled thinly. Martin found alternative housing. That's the goal, dear. Transition, not dependency. It should have made sense. That's the whole point of shelters. But I'd seen Martin's bag still under his bunk that afternoon, and his shoes. "Left in a hurry," she said when I pressed. "Some opportunities don't wait." Her smile never faltered. But the next morning, another resident was gone. And the morning, after that, another, always explained away as housing placement, always with bags left behind. One night I stayed late. I told Miss Warren I was reorganizing donation boxes, and she gave me a distracted nod, too busy with paperwork to argue. At 11 p.m., the shelter was quiet. The residents were in their bunks, lights dim. I sat in the kitchen listening. That's when I heard it. A faint cry, muffled, from below. I froze, every nerve in my body screaming at me to ignore it. But I moved anyway, heart hammering, following the sound down the hall toward the supply room. At the far end stood a locked steel door. I'd assumed it was storage. But now I could hear it clearly. A voice, weak, pleading. "Please, help." My hand shook. I rattled the knob. Locked. I pressed my ear to the metal. Another cry, cut off by a wet, choking sound. The hairs on my arms stood straight. Footsteps behind me made me spin. It was one of the staff, a man named Calloway. He was big, heavy-set, with pale eyes that never seemed to blink. He stood there in the dim hall, watching me. "Lost?" he asked. I stammered something about looking for cleaning supplies. He smiled slowly. "That's not where we keep 'em." He walked me back without another word, but the whole time, his eyes stayed on me. That night, I dreamed of Martin, his humming cut off mid-note, his bag sitting under his bunk forever waiting. I told myself I was imagining it, that my brain wanted drama, conspiracy, something dark. But the next week proved me wrong. I caught Miss Warren in the hall with two men I'd never seen. They wore scrubs under their coats. They were wheeling a gurney covered with a sheet. The wheels squeaked softly against the linoleum. I froze, halfway down the hall. Miss Warren's eyes snapped to mine. For the first time, her smile disappeared. "Go back to the kitchen," she said. Her tone brooked no argument. The gurney disappeared behind the steel door. By then, I couldn't sit still. Every instinct screamed at me to run, quit, never look back. But every time I thought about it, I saw the girl in the corner bunk, the veteran with burned arms, the toddler clutching his mother's leg. If something was happening here, walking away meant leaving them to it. So I stayed, and I watched. I noticed more things now. New residents came in, hopeful, grateful. Within days, some vanished, always at night, always when certain staff were on duty. Records were altered. I saw the intake log once. 3 names scratched out in thick black marker. When I asked, Warren snapped. "Confidentiality." And then there was the basement. I never stopped thinking about what I'd heard through that door. 2 weeks in, I made a plan. I borrowed a set of old keys from the supply closet, swiped when Calloway left his ring unattended. I didn't know if one would work, but I had to try. That night, I stayed after again. Midnight passed. The shelter was silent. I crept down the hall. The steel door loomed at the end. My keys rattled in my hand. First one, then another. The third slid in, turned. The lock clicked. My pulse hammered in my throat as I pushed the door open. The air inside was cold, metallic, reeking of disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. A narrow stairwell led down into concrete. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to turn back. But then I thought of Curtis whispering, "Don't go downstairs," and I went. The basement was a corridor lined with rooms, windows on each door but covered with metal slats so you could only peek through narrow gaps. The first room was empty. Just a cot, a bucket, restraints bolted to the wall. The second wasn't. A man sat strapped to a table, tubes snaking from his arms to machines that hummed softly. His eyes fluttered open when he heard me. His lips moved, cracked and dry. "Please, help." I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. Behind me, the stairwell door slammed shut. I spun. Miss Warren stood at the bottom step, Calloway at her side. 2 others in scrubs flanked them. Warren's smile was gone now. Her eyes were cold, flat. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Miss Warren's voice hung in the cold basement air. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but the door behind her was already blocked. Calloway's bulk filled half the stairwell. The 2 men in scrubs carried bags that clinked faintly, medical kits or worse. I took 1 step back. My heel scraped concrete. The sound seemed deafening. The man strapped to the table moaned weakly. His eyes found mine, pleading. "Help!" Warren's gaze shifted to him, then back to me. Her tone stayed smooth, practiced. "This isn't what you think." My throat clenched. He's strapped to a table. "A detox protocol," she said. "Some of these people are very sick. You don't understand the burden we carry." The lie was so thin it insulted me. "Then why lock the doors?" I snapped, though my voice shook. Calloway's lips curled into something close to a smile. He started down the stairs. Instinct took over. I darted sideways into the first open room. The stench of bleach hit me hard. Empty restraints dangled from the wall. I slammed the door shut behind me, fumbling for a lock. There wasn't one. Footsteps thundered closer. I looked around desperately. A vent, low near the floor, barely wide enough for my shoulders. Rusted but loose. I dropped to my knees, clawed the grate off, and shoved myself inside just as the door burst open. Calloway's boots stomped in. I held my breath, pressed flat, praying he wouldn't think to look down. His shadow loomed across the floor. He muttered, "She's here." Warren's voice answered from the hall. "Leave her. She's seen enough. By morning, she won't matter." Calloway lingered a moment longer, then stepped back out. The door shut. I crawled forward. The vent, scraping my elbows, the air thick with dust. I pushed until my arms trembled, until I found another grate. Beyond it, a different room, this one stacked with coolers, rows of them, white lids sealed tight. Curiosity warred with dread. I pried one open. Inside lay bags of blood, carefully labeled, dated. Next cooler. Organs, kidneys, livers, sealed in plastic, packed in ice. My stomach lurched. I nearly screamed but clamped a hand over my mouth. They weren't just torturing people. They were harvesting them. I crawled until the vent ended at another grate. Through it, I saw a hallway. Empty. I kicked the grate loose, tumbled out. My knees buckled on the cold floor. Every instinct said run, but I couldn't leave the man on the table. I doubled back, heart hammering. His eyes lit when he saw me again. "Please." I fumbled with the straps. They were leather, stiff, buckled tight. I got one loose, then another. His arm flopped weakly to the side. "Can you stand?" I whispered. He shook his head. The stairwell door banged open. Voices spilled down. I panicked, dragged him half off the table, propped him against the wall. "Hide," I begged, even though I knew he couldn't. Then I bolted deeper into the basement. The corridor narrowed. Ahead was another door, unlocked. I slipped through and froze. It wasn't a room. It was a chamber. Cages lined the walls, stacked too high. Inside, residents, dozens. Men, women. Even the girl I'd seen clutching her knees upstairs. Their faces pressed against the bars when they saw me. Hands reached out, trembling. "Help us," they whispered. "Please, please." Tears blurred my vision. Keys. I needed keys. Footsteps thundered closer. I spun, desperate. On the wall near the door hung a rack of tools. Scalpels, bone saws, and keys. I snatched them, fumbling, jamming them into locks. One cage opened, then another. The resident stumbled out, weak, skeletal, but alive. Chaos erupted. Pleas, sobs, movement. Too loud, too fast. Warren's voice cut through. "Stop her." Figures surged into the room. Calloway barreled forward. I swung the key ring, metal clanging against his face. He roared, staggered. Hands grabbed me from behind. I twisted, sank my teeth into a wrist. The man screamed, "Let go." Residents swarmed now, some clawing at the staff, others scrambling for the stairs. For the first time, I saw panic flicker across Warren's face. "Contain them," she shrieked. But it was too late. I was dragged with the tide of bodies, up the stairs, into the hall. The building shook with chaos. Doors slammed, alarms blared. Staff fought to block exits, but there were too many of us. I pushed through, shoving, clawing, until cold night air hit my face. Outside, the fog hung low over Salem's streets. Residents scattered into the dark, some collapsing, some running. I grabbed the girl with the vacant eyes, pulled her with me. She resisted at first, then clung to my arm. Behind us, Warren screamed orders. Calloway charged through the door, blood streaking his face, eyes wild. I thought we were dead. Then red and blue lights lit the night. Police cruisers skidded to a stop. Officers poured out, guns raised. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing. The girl clung tighter. The cops stormed the building. Shouts, commands, chaos. Warren was dragged out minutes later, wrists cuffed, still spitting fury. Calloway, too, face swollen, roaring threats. Paramedics swarmed. Stretchers rolled. Survivors wrapped in blankets. One officer crouched beside me. "You're safe now. You did good." Safe. The word felt alien. In the days after, the news exploded. Organ harvesting ring busted in Salem shelter. Photos of Warren and her staff plastered every screen. Investigations spread, names of donors, silent partners exposed. The survivors were taken to hospitals. Some didn't make it, but many did. Curtis, the man who'd warned me, sat in his bed humming again when I visited. This time, his voice was steady. The girl from the cage clung to me whenever I came by. She still hadn't spoken, but she didn't need to. They asked if I wanted anonymity, if I wanted to disappear, heal quietly, but I said no. My name went on the record. People needed to know. The nightmares still come, the sound of the steel door slamming, the glint of knives on the wall, the coolers filled with ice. But when I wake, I remind myself, I wasn't too late. For once, someone got out. For once, evil didn't win. Most people think of Sisters, Oregon, as charming. Mountain views, little shops, horseback trails, tourists sipping lattes under hanging flower baskets. But drive 20 minutes into the woods, and you hit stretches of pine so thick the light barely makes it through. That's where Camp Crescent Pines sat, boarded up, rotting, forgotten. At least that's what we were told. Our university had a volunteer program. Reclaim Oregon's forgotten spaces. Some PR stunt with the forestry department. Free labor for them, resume fluff for us. That's how 6 of us ended up driving into the pines with rakes and gloves, joking about summer camp horror movies. The group was me, my best friend Troy, his girlfriend Madison, twins Luke and Lily from our environmental studies class, and Sarah, who signed up because she needed community service hours for her scholarship. We reached the camp at dusk. The entrance arch still stood, letters chipped. Welcome to Camp Crescent Pines. Pine needles blanketed the dirt road. On either side, cabins slumped with sagging roofs. The mess hall loomed at the center, its windows broken, door hanging open. Madison wrinkled her nose. Looks like tetanus waiting to happen. Troy grinned, pushing her shoulder. Come on, it's character building. The cabins creaked when we opened them. Inside, dust-coated bunks lined the walls, graffiti scrawled across the wood. Most of it was the usual, band logos, crude jokes. But one phrase repeated, carved into bunks, written in marker, even scratched into the floor, "Don't stay after dark." We all noticed. None of us said much. We set up sleeping bags in the main hall. Safer together, we figured. By lantern light, we ate gas station sandwiches, laughed, tried to shake off the creep factor. But as the night stretched, unease settled in. Around midnight, Sarah asked, "Why did this place shut down anyway?" Luke shrugged. "Funding, probably." Lily frowned. "I read something. Online. They called it a correctional camp. Not regular summer stuff. For troubled kids." Troy leaned forward. "Like juvie light?" "Worse," Lily said. "Behavioral program. Drills. Isolation. Punishment cabins. Kids went missing. That's why it closed." Silence followed. The wind moaned through broken windows. Finally, Madison forced a laugh. "Urban legend. Every abandoned camp has one." But none of us slept easy after that. The next morning, we got to work, clearing brush, pulling boards off windows, pretending we didn't care. By afternoon, sweat dripped down our backs, hands blistered. That's when Sarah called out, "Hey, found something." Behind the mess hall, half hidden under ivy, was a set of wooden doors, padlocked. A storm cellar. We stared at it. The lock was old, rusted, hanging loose. Troy fetched a crowbar from our supplies. One good yank, and the lock snapped. The doors groaned open, releasing a breath of stale, cold air. A wooden stairway descended into darkness. "Bet that's the kitchen root cellar," Luke said. But when our flashlights cut through the dark, it wasn't potatoes and cans waiting below. It was rooms, concrete floors, narrow hallways, chains bolted to the walls, a desk with yellowing files scattered across it. Sarah whispered, "Jesus Christ." I picked up a file. A name was typed across the top. Delaney, Rachel, age 12. Below, notes. Non-compliant. Solitary recommended. Correction incomplete. I dropped it like it burned. The walls were lined with scratches, tallies etched deep, hundreds of them. Madison gagged. "This is sick," Troy swore. "We should tell someone." But Lily was staring at the far wall, pale as death. "Look," spray painted there, big letters dripping red, "Don't stay after dark." We came up shaken, filthy. The sun was already dropping between the trees. No one spoke as we chained the door shut again. Sarah finally broke the silence. "We leave. Tonight. Right now." Madison nodded quickly. "I'm not sleeping here another second." But when we got back to the parking lot, Troy's Jeep sat with all 4 tires slashed. Luke's old Subaru was the same. Rubber shredded, rims on dirt. Our stomachs dropped in unison. "Who the hell?" Luke began, but his voice died. In the dirt beside the cars were footprints, heavy boots, dozens of them, leading out of the lot, disappearing into the trees. Lily whispered, "We're not alone." We retreated to the hall, barricading the doors with benches, every creak of the forest outside making us jump. Dusk bled into night, shadows swallowing the camp. Around 10, we heard it. Voices, faint, drifting through the trees, chanting, low, rhythmic. Madison clapped her hands over her ears. "No, no, no," Troy whispered. "Shh, listen." The voices grew louder, closer, words indistinct but tones unmistakable. Commands, responses like drills. Footsteps circled the hall. Gravel crunched, leaves snapped. Flashlights cut through the cracks in the windows, sweeping across the room. Sarah mouthed, "They came back." And then, from the cellar we'd sealed, a sound. A heavy thud. Then another. Chains rattling. Like something, or someone, moving down there, trying to get out. We froze, breath caught, hearts hammering. Lily whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. They never left. They've been waiting. Outside, the chanting stopped. Silence. Then slowly boots approached the hall door. Heavy, purposeful. The knob rattled once, twice. Then a voice, low, gravelly, just outside. Campers. Lights out. The voice outside the hall door was low, commanding. We froze. No one breathed. The knob rattled again, harder this time. Sarah gripped my arm, whispering so faint I barely heard. They're still here. The barricade groaned as something shoved against the door. A bench scraped across the floor. Then silence again. Whoever was out there wasn't rushing. They were waiting. Troy raised a finger to his lips, mouthing, "Stay quiet." But the silence was worse. The shadows pressed against the hall windows, shapes moving just out of view. Flashlights flared through the cracks. Madison sobbed softly. Lily held her hand over her mouth, tears cutting down her face. Then, from beneath us came a new sound. Chains rattling, a muffled cry. The cellar. We'd chained the doors, but something was down there. Or someone. Luke whispered, "Jesus Christ, they got people in there." The boots outside crunched closer. Whoever it was, they were circling, testing us. Troy whispered, "We need to move. We stay, we're boxed in." "But where?" Sarah hissed. "They cut the tires. The woods are crawling with them." Troy pointed toward the back. The cabins. The trailhead. "If we can make it." The hall door cracked. Wood splintered. The barricade jumped an inch as something slammed against it. We ran. The back door hung loose, hinges rusted. We shoved through into the cold night air. Pines loomed tall, wind whispering through needles. The dark was thick, alive. We sprinted across the dirt clearing, shoes pounding gravel. Behind us, shouts rose. Male voices, barking commands like drill sergeants. "Left side, circle them." Flashlights cut through the dark, beams slicing across the cabins. Shadows moved fast between trees. We ducked behind an old cabin, huddling. My chest burned, lungs raw. Madison clutched Troy's hand, whispering, "We're gonna die here." No, Troy said, eyes fierce. "Not if we fight." Sarah shook her head. "There's too many. We need to hide." But hiding wouldn't last. Already beams swept closer. That's when Lily pointed toward the wreck shed. There. Tools. It was madness, but it was all we had. We bolted. The wreck shed reeked of rot and mold. Shelves sagged with broken paddles, ropes, rusted shovels. I grabbed a length of chain, heavy in my hands. Troy took an axe handle. Sarah clutched a crowbar. Boots crunched outside. Voices barked, closing in. Then one of them stepped into the doorway. He wore khakis and a camp polo, faded but clean. His face was weathered, mouth curled into a cold smile. A flashlight beam lit his eyes. "Campers," he said softly, "back in your bunks." Troy swung the axe handle. It cracked against the man's wrist. He cursed, flashlight spinning. We surged forward, slamming the door, shoving shelves against it. "Run," Troy barked. We smashed a back window, shards flying. One by one, we scrambled out, cutting ourselves on glass. My palms bled as I hit the ground. We tore into the trees. The forest swallowed us. Pines loomed tall, moonlight faint through the canopy. We ran blind, branches whipping our faces. Shouts followed, closer than before. "Find them! They can't leave!" We stumbled onto a trail, old and overgrown. It twisted deeper into the woods. I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her along. My brain was scrambled, desperate. Behind us, beams bobbed. Voices shouted, boots pounded. Luke gasped, "We'll never outrun them." Lily stopped suddenly, pointing off trail. "There's the lake." Through the trees, water glimmered faintly. We crashed toward it, lungs burning. The lake opened wide under moonlight, black and endless. At its edge, an old dock jutted crooked into the water. Sarah whispered, horrified, "We're trapped." Troy's eyes scanned the shore. Then he pointed. The boathouse. Half collapsed, it leaned over the water. We sprinted inside. The boathouse stank of mildew and stagnant water. Canoes lay overturned, oars rotted. But in the rafters, above the boat racks, was a loft. We scrambled up the ladder, pulling boards over ourselves. Hearts pounded, breath shallow. Through the cracks, we saw flashlights sweep across the dock. Men, at least 6, camp polos, khakis, faces blank. They moved in formation like soldiers. One stepped onto the dock, voice low, commanding, "Campers don't leave until they're corrected." The others spread out, scanning the shore. We stayed still, praying they wouldn't check inside. Then the loft groaned, loud, all flashlights snapped up. There! The door crashed open, boots thundered inside. We had no choice. Troy dropped from the loft, swinging the axe handle. It cracked against the first man's head. The others shouted. I followed, chain whipping. Sarah slammed her crowbar down. Chaos, screams, splinters flying. We fought like animals. And somehow, we broke through. We sprinted back into the forest. This time, we didn't stop. The trail sloped uphill, rocks biting our feet. Behind us, shouts faded, but we knew they weren't far. At the ridge, we collapsed, gasping. The camp spread below, shadows over cabins, mess hall sagging, lake glinting. And then we saw it. The cellar doors. Figures were dragging people out. Teenagers, maybe younger, shackled, weak. Their cries carried on the wind. They're still running it, Lily whispered, horrified. They never stopped. Troy's jaw tightened. Then we burn it down. We raided the maintenance shed for fuel cans. Our hands shook as we splashed gasoline across cabin walls, through the mess hall, over the boarded cellar doors. Shouts rang out when they saw us. Boots thundered closer. Troy struck the first match. Flames roared to life, racing along walls, devouring pine. Smoke billowed high, thick and black. The camp lit like a funeral pyre. Figures screamed, chaos erupted. Some ran into the woods. Others tried to stamp flames, but it was too late. The fire spread fast, hungry. We dragged the shackled kids away from the cellar, breaking chains with the crowbar. They stumbled, crying, clutching us. Go, Troy shouted. To the road. We ran together, smoke at our backs, the forest, glowing orange. By dawn, we hit the highway. A trucker saw us, a half-dozen bloody, smoke-stained kids with smaller children in tow, and slammed to a stop. Police swarmed within the hour. Fire crews, reporters later. The camp burned for 2 days, and in the ashes, they found what we already knew. Chains, files, names of children who'd vanished decades ago. They called it a reform program gone rogue. We knew it was worse, but the kids we pulled from the cellar lived. And we lived too. When people asked how we got out, Troy just said, "We didn't stay after dark." The road into Shiniko felt endless. We'd been driving since Bend, the desert stretching flat and pale under a washed-out sky, heat shimmering off asphalt. It was supposed to be just a pit stop. Grab photos in the ghost town, stretch our legs, maybe buy a Coke from a tourist shop if one was still open. There were 4 of us in the car. Me, Hannah, my cousin Blake, and his girlfriend Riley. We were heading to Portland after a long weekend of camping. Shiniko sat right along our route. I'd heard of it. Seen Instagram reels of empty streets and old West buildings with peeling paint. Perfect creepy photo op, Riley had said, grinning. By the time we rolled in, the sun was already dropping, bleeding orange across the high desert. The town looked exactly like the pictures. One main drag, lined with wooden storefronts, false front hotels, and boarded-up windows. A water tower loomed above the buildings, but it wasn't as empty as I'd expected. Curtains twitched in an upstairs window as we parked. A figure moved behind frosted glass in what looked like the old post office. Blake frowned. Thought this place was dead. Tourists, I said. Probably other people like us. But even as I said it, my stomach knotted. Because when we stepped out of the car, the street was silent. Too silent. No other cars, no footsteps, no sound but the wind rattling a loose sign. We started walking. Hannah snapped pictures of faded storefronts. Riley posed against a wagon wheel. Blake cracked jokes about Old West shootouts. But my eyes kept darting to the windows. Mannequins stood in some shop dummies dressed in 1900s garb, a woman in a bonnet, a boy in suspenders. But when I looked again, I could have sworn the boy's head had turned. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "See what?" Hannah asked. I shook my head. Nothing. We reached the hotel at the end of the street. Its double doors stood wide open, hinges squealing softly in the wind. Inside, the lobby was dusty, with broken chairs and a front desk piled with yellowing guest ledgers. Blake whistled. Creepy as hell. Love it. He wandered to the stairs. They groaned under his weight. Come on, let's check it out. We followed reluctantly. Upstairs, the hall stretched long and dim, wallpaper peeling. Room doors lined both sides. Some hung open. Inside, old iron bed frames stood bare, blankets rotted away. In one room, a rocking chair faced the window, and in it, a mannequin sat, a man in a bowler hat, glass eyes reflecting the setting sun. Riley snapped a picture, laughing nervously. God, that's nightmare fuel. But when she looked at the photo, her face drained. What? Blake asked. She turned the phone so we could see. The mannequin's head was turned in the picture, looking straight at her. We left the hotel fast. Back on the street, the sun was almost gone, shadows stretching long. That's when the lamps flickered on. Old street lamps, glass cracked, bulbs yellow. But they glowed to life, one after another, humming faintly. Hannah whispered, "There's no way those still work." Every storefront lit up too, pale bulbs buzzing behind dusty windows. Figures stood silhouetted inside, some still, some moving. The mannequins weren't mannequins. They were people. Watching us. Panic surged. We bolted for the car. The silence shattered with sound. Footsteps echoing from alleys, doors slamming open, voices low and murmuring, impossible to make out. We piled in, slamming doors, Blake fumbling with the keys. The engine roared. Relief washed through me, until the headlights flared across the windshield and showed figures standing in the street, dozens, lining the road, men, women, children, all dressed like it was still 1905. Blank faces, pale eyes fixed on us. Blake cursed and threw the car into reverse. Tires spun gravel. But more figures stepped out behind us, blocking the way. We were trapped. "Drive!" Riley screamed. Blake swerved left, plowing over the curb, bouncing across weeds. We shot down a side street, old houses looming on either side. Curtains fluttered. Faces peered out. Every window alive with eyes. Something slammed the roof. A hand, pale and filthy, smacked against the glass. Hannah screamed. Blake swerved, throwing it off. We tore through the grid of streets, desperate, but every turn brought us back to Maine. Every alley, every side road, somehow, impossibly, funneled us back. The crowd was waiting, closer now, and smiling. We abandoned the car. It was madness, but we had no choice. We bolted into an alley, shadows stretching, footsteps chasing close behind. We burst through a back door into what looked like a shop. Shelves lined with jars of candy turned to dust, a cracked mirror reflecting our pale faces. At the back stood a mannequin of a shopkeeper. His hat was tilted. His glass eyes gleamed. Then he moved. His hand twitched. His head lifted. His lips curled into a smile. We screamed, bolting out the side door, crashing into another street. More figures waited, silent, still. Then, as one, they turned toward us and began to walk. We ran until our lungs burned, past the water tower, past a row of decaying barns. The desert stretched beyond, but no matter which way we turned, the streets bent us back. "Impossible," Blake gasped. "It's impossible." Riley clutched his arm, sobbing. "We're never getting out." That's when Hannah pointed with a trembling hand. "Look." At the end of the street stood the old schoolhouse, its doors wide open, a dim light glowing inside. It felt like a trap, but it was the only place not already swarming. We stumbled in. The air reeked of dust and chalk. Desks stood in neat rows, blackboards scrawled with faint lessons. At the front sat a teacher, hair in a bun, dress high-collared, skin waxy pale. She stared at us with unblinking eyes and spoke, voice brittle with age. "Class is in session." The doors slammed shut behind us like a gunshot, dust raining from the rafters as we spun, clawing at the handles that wouldn't budge. At the front of the room, the teacher rose from her desk. She moved stiffly, dress swaying, bun perfectly intact. Her face was pale and waxy, but her eyes gleamed with something too sharp to be glass. "Class," she said softly, voice brittle with age. "Take your seats." We backed away. The rows of desks groaned. That's when we realized they weren't empty. Figures sat slumped in them. Children, dozens. At first we thought mannequins again. Their clothes were old-fashioned, their hair stiff with dust. But as our flashlights swept over their faces, some twitched. Heads lifted. Eyes rolled sluggishly, following us. "Jesus Christ," Hannah whispered. Riley gagged, clutching Blake's arm. "They're alive." The teacher's lips curled into a thin smile. "Campers must learn their lessons." Then she snapped her fingers. The children rose as one. We bolted between desks, shoving past bony hands that clawed at our clothes. Their eyes were cloudy, their mouths open, but they moved with grim purpose. Their skin was gray, cracked, like they hadn't seen daylight in years. We shoved through the crowd, crashing into the blackboard. Chalk dust exploded. I swung my flashlight, smashing a boy's hand away. Hannah screamed as fingers tangled in her hair. Blake yanked her free, kicking the desk over. We found a side door and burst through into a narrow hallway. It led to the back of the schoolhouse, stairs creaking under our feet. The air was suffocating, thick with mildew and rot. At the far end, a door groaned open on its own. A lantern burned inside, dim but steady. "Don't," I whispered. "It's a trap." But we had nowhere else to go. The basement stretched wide. Rows of shelves sagged with books, ledgers, boxes. The smell of decay was stronger here, sour and sweet at once. Riley lifted a ledger, dust puffing. Her voice trembled as she read aloud. "Campers inducted July 1907. Correction in progress, indefinite. Failure results in assimilation." The names filled page after page, hundreds of them. Hannah flipped one open at random and gasped. Our names were there, written in neat black ink. The date? Today. Riley dropped the book, pages fluttering. That's when the chanting began again. It came from above, voices low and rhythmic, echoing through the floorboards. Boots stomped in unison. The whole schoolhouse shook. We stumbled back up the stairs. The classroom was empty now, desks overturned, chalk smeared. But the windows were filled, faces pressed against the glass from outside. Men, women, children, all in turn-of-the-century clothes. Their eyes glinted in the lamplight, blank but intent. The front doors creaked open. Slowly. Figures filed in. Silent. Dozens of them. They fanned out across the room, circling. Blake raised his fists, wild-eyed. "Stay back." The teacher stepped forward. Her voice cracked like an old record. "Campers don't leave. Campers become residents." We fought. God, we fought. Blake swung a chair, splintering it across a man's chest. Hannah screamed, jabbing her flashlight beam into faces. Riley hurled a desk. But for every one we pushed back, 3 more pressed closer. Pale hands gripped my arms, my legs. Nails dug into my skin. Blake roared, trying to tear them off me. A dozen hands dragged him down, pinning him to the floor. He kicked, cursed, screamed my name, and then his voice cut off. When I saw his face again, it was slack. His eyes were empty. His lips curled into the same thin smile as the others. "Join us," he whispered. Riley shrieked, swinging wildly. They caught her wrists, twisted them back, forced her to her knees. She thrashed, sobbing. Hannah lunged, but was yanked down too. I was the last standing. They backed me into the teacher's desk. Her hands, cold and stiff, clamped on my shoulders. She leaned close, breath sour, whispering, "Now you see, child. No one leaves Shiniko." Figures swarmed. Cold fingers gripped my arms, my hair, my chest. They forced me into the rocking chair in the corner. Ropes wrapped tight, cutting into my skin. My chest heaved, sobs tearing out of me. Across the room, Blake, Riley, Hannah, all of them, stood still now. Smiling. Blank. Their eyes fixed on me. No flicker of recognition left. The teacher brushed dust from my sleeve, straightening me like a doll. There. Another resident for our town. The crowd parted. 2 men in suspenders carried a frame forward. A shop window, torn from one of the buildings. They propped it in front of me, glass smeared with age. Through it, I saw my own reflection, pale, terrified, eyes wide. And then the glass fogged. My face shifted, smoothed. Until I was smiling back, they wheeled me out into the night, past rows of silent buildings, past windows filled with watching faces. They placed me in the general store's front window, propped behind dusty jars. My reflection gleamed in the glass. My hands twitched, but only slightly. My mouth stretched in that same blank smile. On the street, the lamps buzzed softly. The town was alive with residents, and I was one of them, forever.